We have yet another defection from the Democratic Party on our hands. Well, 2024 presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is planning to announce that he will run as an independent, according to Mediaite. A Kennedy campaign insider reportedly told the Journal that Bobby feels that the DNC is changing the rules to exclude his candidacy, so an independent run is the only way to go.
Kennedy's campaign is reportedly planning attack ads against the Democratic National Committee to pave the way for his October 9th announcement in Philadelphia that he will be running as an independent, according to a text reviewed by Mediaite. Here's a video he recently posted teasing his announcement.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be in Philadelphia on October 9th to make a major announcement at the very birthplace of our nation. I'm not going to tell you right now exactly what that announcement will be. I can say, though, that if you've been waiting to come to one of my public events, this will be the one to come to. I'll be speaking about a sea change in American politics and what your part and my part is in that change. A lot of Americans who had previously given up any hope that real change would ever come through the American electoral process have begun to find new hope in my candidacy.
Now, recent analysis from 538 finds that RFK Jr. is more favorable among Republican voters than Democratic voters, which raises this really important question of if he becomes now part of the spoiler discourse that Cornel West and other third-party candidates have had to weather. Is it in fact the case that he would be more of a spoiler for Democrats as opposed to Republicans?
I actually think it is, because even though he's more favorable among Republicans, polls also suggest that Democrats are more interested in voting third party. In fact, there's this poll on Newsweek that found that if Democrats and Republicans nominate Biden and Trump, about a third of Democratic voters would defect to RFK Jr. if he were running as an independent, versus only 14% of Republicans. So there's this weird dichotomy, right? Republicans seem to really like RFK Jr. And maybe part of that, though, is because of the potential for him to be a spoiler, because of the potential for him to sort of take advantage of this divide between progressives and more blue-collar Democrats versus the establishment.
I frankly would love it if that were true. I would love it if it were the case that a third of Democrats had an appetite to vote for a third-party candidate, whomever they are, as a rebuke to the corporate Democrats who are so out of touch with what the base wants. And I would also include within that the corporate Republicans, also vastly out of touch with what the base wants. But I just don't think that there's any realm of possibility in that happening. For one, to the extent that there is an appetite among progressives for a candidate not named Biden, RFK Jr. has betrayed, I think, a significant part of the base with respect to some of his foreign policy remarks, specifically about Israel-Palestine. And to the extent that he is very much in line with the base on both sides of the aisle when it comes to Ukraine policy, there is this question of what it means to frame yourself as an anti-imperialist candidate who wants to reduce military spending when you seem to only have that attitude toward one narrow conflict and have such a contradictory approach to Israel-Palestine, and not just a kind of soft position on Israel-Palestine, not even just a status quo Democrat-Republican Party position on Israel-Palestine, but a really hawkish, aggressive defense of the special relationship with Israel. It's just inconsistent, and I think it makes a lot of progressives, separate and apart from their investment in the interest and well-being and civil rights of Palestinians, really question whether or not he has a holistic anti-imperialist worldview.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, too, because Vivek Ramaswamy on the Republican side took a lot of heat recently for saying that he wanted Israel to become more independent over the next 10 years, reduce some funding from the United States, and people freaked out. I mean, they literally took it as anti-Semitic and accused him of rejecting Israel as an ally entirely. And his response was, well, if we want to take care of our allies, shouldn't we be suggesting and supporting them and encouraging them to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet? And yeah, Republicans didn't like that.
Yeah. And he backtracked, by the way.
Vivek did. And he did. And Jessica and I talked about it on one of the Friday shows, and we were like, why is that so controversial to say? Is it donor money from places like AIPAC and other nonprofits? I mean, that's probably a huge part of it. Unfortunately, if we're going to talk about reducing foreign aid, then I think you're right. It has to be consistent and not just convenient when American people have this very overwhelming majority when polled about reducing spending to Ukraine, for example. I've also heard some consternation from people on the progressive side about RFK's views on COVID and the vaccines. And I wonder if that is another reason why he's been hemorrhaging some support among Democrats.
Honestly, in terms of kind of the online left, I would argue that they are actually very simpatico with him on those issues. I do think that there is a real anti-authoritarian streak that comes through with some of the criticisms that the left has been making of ACLU not upholding free speech rights the way that it historically has done. The left has shown sympathy for some of the apps that were hurt by the trucker boycott in Canada, despite not having necessarily identity of interest and political interest with them, concerns about platforms being able to prevent people from fundraising because of their political ideology. So I don't think that COVID, frankly, I think if anything, it's the liberals who are going to vote for Biden anyway, who don't like that aspect of his platform. The anti-vax stuff, the accusations, that was all coming from like the New York Times and MSNBC.
That's a good point.
The left's critique was, I think, frankly, more substantive. I do wonder, though, the left does have an option in the race in Cornel West of someone where they can be uncompromising with respect to their anti-imperialist bona fides and don't have to pick and choose. The question is whether or not someone like Cornel West is going to get as much attention as RFK Jr. has been able to get, because he's been platformed by people like Elon Musk in the Twitter spaces, and also because Fox News, the corporate conservative media, has had an incentive to kind of platform him as someone who is going to come on TV and ding Biden. If he's now someone who can come on TV and take away from Trump and Republicans as well as Democrats, is he going to get the same kind of friendly treatment from Fox News?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think right now what you have is you have basically maybe the MAGA-based Trump supporters who like RFK Jr. because he's anti-establishment, because he's really bucking the trend, the corporate trend of a lot of the views that he has. But then you also have establishment and corporate Republicans like Fox News and their associated entities that I think are probably boosting him because he's critical of the Democratic Party. And so I think actually you would likely see Republican support fall if he does end up running as an independent, because you're going to lose the sort of party line Republicans who are only using him as a spoiler right now for the left.
Yeah, I think that's right. I will say, generally speaking, I would have loved an announcement like this coming from someone like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of people at the end of his 2016 and 2020 campaigns hoped that he would demonstrate his willingness to really confront the establishment, the bipartisan corporate establishment, head on by running third party, because that is the ultimate move that says, if this isn't about this issue or that issue, this is about the idea that our political system is inherently captured and that both parties spend so many dollars fighting ballot initiatives that would enable us to have ranked choice voting or to get rid of first past the post voting and really open up our political system to a party that actually listens to what voters want. I always bring up this 2014 Princeton study that shows that there's basically zero relationship between those things that poll well with the public and what Congress actually focuses on. And I think that we see that in the very quick vote that they got on how to dress in Congress while child poverty doubles, right? 88% of Democrats, 49% of Republicans support something like Medicare for all, and neither party does. And I think when you follow the corporate dollars, you can see why. But is someone who is unwilling to stand up to the Israel lobby really going to be willing to challenge power the way it takes to run as a third party? And I think that fundamental inconsistency is something that he's going to have to continue to wrestle with.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I was very disappointed in Bernie because he repeatedly bent the knee to the Democratic establishment when he was one of the only candidates that could possibly capture the progressive populist sentiment of the left. And he could have brought so many people with him. And to sit there and pledge loyalty to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and the DNC repeatedly was, so frustrating for me because I disagree with Bernie on a whole host of issues, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think he's a pretty wacky guy, but I also agree with him on some stuff, and I like that he's anti-establishment. And it was very disappointing to see him behave in such a cowardly way.
And he's still doing it. He's tweeting out that we're going to get that Ukraine funding. Don't worry, guys. And it's dispiriting. So I kind of love to see it. I'm interested to see what RFK Jr. is up to, but I really would have liked to have seen it from some people who I think have some more solid, independent and progressive bona fides, who weren't just running a week ago on, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Kennedy Democrat, look at what a Democrat I am. All right, more Rising for you after this. Do stick around.